The political fallout certainly continues for Joe Biden over his response here. Ryan, why don't you break down some of the latest polling for us?
Not looking good. You put up this first one. So you several months ago, you started seeing polls showing Biden losing vote share among young people and among Hispanics. And originally, it would kick off days of kind of discourse online about how the polling must be completely wrong. We've seen so much of it now. People just have to start taking it seriously. So this poll from The Independent has Trump leading Biden among Hispanic voters, an absolutely incredible collapse for Biden. This has Trump up 39-34. Even if you consider this to be something of an outlier, it's directionally in the same direction as other polls you've seen. I think Biden won close to 2/3 of the Hispanic voters in 2023. We've also seen Donald Trump leading Joe Biden among young people in this independent poll. In this poll, 37-33. Even if you say, look, this is wrong, how wrong is it? Let's say it's off by 10 points in each direction.
Yeah.
That still puts Biden only at 43.
Still a catastrophe.
To 27 or something. Like Biden has to win, like he did in 2020, overwhelmingly among young people. He has to run up numbers with Hispanic voters. He has to maintain his margins with black voters. And he's not doing any of that.
Yeah.
The coalition is coming apart at the seams.
It's collapsed. And I mean, it sort of exposes the lie. There's this idea in modern politics that everyone is just like totally partisan and no one changes their mind based on events on the ground. Not so, guys. People are changing their mind in real time in a major way. And in the same poll, which was a USA Today Suffolk University poll, they also found that only 63% of black voters support Joe Biden. Now, this is interesting. It's not that black voters are saying, oh, actually, we love Donald Trump. No, Donald Trump is still getting the same 12% of black voters that supported him last time around. However, you have 1 in 5 black respondents saying they're going to back a third-party candidate in 2024. And it's, a similar story with young people. It's not like they are flocking to Donald Trump. It's that they're looking around and saying, you know what, I can't do this anymore. And it turns out that participating in mass atrocities and, spending our taxpayer dollars to kill babies in the Gaza Strip, turns out that has not only horrific humanitarian consequences and consequences for U.S. interests, it also has some pretty negative consequences for you politically.
And you might be asking yourself, do Democrats just want to lose? Well, maybe, but let's assume for the sake of this conversation that they actually want to win. And then the question is, why on earth would they stand behind a candidate who is getting crushed so badly in the polls when you still have almost a year to go before the election? And the answer that I get from Democratic partisans and operatives in Washington is that their wing and a prayer is that those people who are telling pollsters now that they're not supporting Biden, but they're not supporting Trump, when push comes to shove, because they are being pushed and shoved into the ballot box, that they will come back to Biden and reluctantly cast a ballot for him. What I think that they're not understanding is not only do you have, maybe Cornel West is on the ballot, maybe Cornel West is not, RFK Jr. is going to be on the ballot in a lot of places. He's getting a lot of publicity within independent media and podcasts, which are places that a lot of working class people get their news from because they're listening to them during quote unquote window time.
Yeah.
Probably most of the people listening to us right now are engaged in some kind of window time. That means that, they're driving a truck, they're driving an Uber, they're just driving themselves on a long commute, or they're working construction, they're working in a kitchen, they're working in a hotel, and they want something to kind of keep their mind off the boredom of the work. So they're listening to these long form podcasts. RFK Jr. is on those. So if he's on the ballot, and you're trying to push these voters who have told you that they hate Biden into voting for Biden, they might take this other choice. And so that bet that they're making is the whole reason and Trump's unpopularity is the whole reason that they're unwilling to consider any kind of alternatives to Biden. It's just a wild bet. And I don't want to hear anything about from those kinds of Democrats about who cares about the electoral politics. if this is the gamble that they're willing to take with the future of the country.
So true. And listen, let's be clear. Trump was also incredibly sycophantic with Israel. RFK Jr. may be the most hawkish.
Yeah, that's what's crazy.
The most pro-Israel of all of them, judging by my recent conversation with him and many of other comments that he said
but voting
as well.
Isn't necessarily rational.
That's right. He is an alternative. He is a protest vote. And, also, by the way, I do think that there is something genuinely different between, okay, he's making all of these statements that are incredibly pro-Israel versus he's shipping the weapons.
Right.
He's blocking the UN resolutions. He's actively participating in these atrocities and running cover right now. Like, we see it before our eyes. That just hits a little different than theoretical statements that are being made. And to underscore, I think, what a break there is, especially among young people on this issue. This to me is extraordinary. I don't know, Ryan, you can tell me because you got a better memory than me, whether you've ever seen anything like this in presidential politics. Put this up on the screen. Biden's own campaign staffers.
17 of them.
17 Biden for President 2024 campaign staffers just published this anonymous Medium post calling him out for his unconditional support. They say, Dear President Biden, we need a ceasefire now. We write to you as the current staff of your re-election campaign as we work to mobilize voters to cast their ballots for you. We must take a moment to acknowledge our tremendous grief and the grief shared by countless other Americans toward the violence occurring in Gaza. We join this campaign because the values that you and we share are ones worth fighting for. Justice, empathy, and our belief in the dignity of human life is the backbone of the Democratic Party, they claim, but of the country. However, your administration's response to Israel's indiscriminate bombing, a carefully chosen word because that's what Biden himself said, in Gaza has been fundamentally antithetical to those values, and we believe it could cost you the 2024 election. They go on to list a series of actions that they would like to see him take, but I don't know that I've ever seen a campaign staff, presidential campaign staff, come out in this organized fashion and say, you have to stop this, you have to change.
Now, they didn't put their names on it, which has been a habit and a pattern in a lot of these staff letters that have circulated, but it was published by Politico's kind of West Wing playbook, which is, as the name suggests, read very closely in the West Wing. And so they very deliberately targeted it to make sure that everybody inside the White House read it. And those reporters, because we've reported on some of these anonymous letters, you make sure that you're not getting punked by like just some it's not some random person DMs you on Twitter and is like, hey, I'm a campaign. And you're like, all right, prove that you have 17 people. Who are the people? All right, okay. Well, now we'll let this ride. But yes, I've never seen anything like this. Partly it's new that staff are willing to stand up in this way. That that's kind of a post 2015, 2020 thing. But you've certainly never seen a staff of a presidential campaign, and certainly not of an incumbent president, come out with this firm of a rejection of their own candidate.
Yeah. So the Biden team does have a plan to try to combat the collapsing poll numbers that they see. Let's put this up on the screen. They're going to lean into Trump and lean into January 6th. And I mean, listen, I might sneer at this, but let's also be clear. I mean, this kind of worked for them in the midterms of like,
this is what they've got.
Listen, we're not really promising much, but we're not them. And Trump is a maniac and all the people he supports is a maniac. And January 6th was horrendous. And, let's throw in the overturning of Roe versus Wade. Again, we're not going to do anything to reclaim those rights, but we're not going to further erode them. And in the midterms, and in every basically special election we've had since then, it's been a pretty potent political message. So I can't completely turn up my nose at it or sneer at it. And
what's so incredible is that when it comes to codifying Roe v. Wade, they actually could run on that. Like you could say, because they're getting an enormous amount of support in special elections and around the country from the rejection of the kind of Republican agenda and the successful Republican agenda of overturning Roe v. Wade. Biden could go to voters and say, if you elect me and hold the Senate and give me one or two more people in the House of Representatives, flip the House, we will codify Roe v. Wade into law. Like you could actually, I know it's a novel idea.
You could actually run on something?
To like make a promise, a pledge of something that you will do, get votes for that thing, and then do that thing. Like you could do that, but that seems to be just so far beyond the imaginations of our politicians that they'd just much rather just say, remember how bad January 6th was and also how, what a maniac Trump is? You don't want that, so vote for us.
Yeah, and I do think that, listen, time will tell. They're betting basically like
he might win. That's what's so crazy. Biden could win.
Absolutely.
But people should not take from this that it's locked in.
No, absolutely. That is certainly the case because people do hate Donald Trump and aren't excited about the chaos that he would bring with another 4 years of him in the White House. But I do think that there is something that has fundamentally broken with regard to the Biden response in Israel with unconditional support for Israel that they don't seem to have really processed. I think they really feel like, oh, they'll just get over it. Like they'll move on.
And if we don't give them a choice, they'll come back.
They'll come back around. And I wouldn't bet on that because I do think that this is a kind of like a Iraq war type breaking point for young people who cannot wrap their heads around the fact that we are so directly complicit in these horrors that they are seeing every day on TikTok and other places, where it's like, okay, this is not just some horror happening in some far off land. Like, we are funding this. We are directly complicit in this. This is happening on our watch with this guy that many of us voted for. And so I do think that it is, a different type of, this isn't just they'll move on to the next issue of the day. I think this has fundamentally reshaped an entire generation's relationship towards the Democratic Party.
Yeah. And I know it'll never happen, but I wanted to get your take on the In These Times piece that was out yesterday.
Yeah, I saw your comments.
Yeah, so they floated Andy Levan for president. Now, it's partly absurd because I have to explain to everybody probably who Andy Levan is. He's a former member of Congress who was basically driven out of office by AIPAC in 2022. He's the scion of the Levan family in Michigan. It's Carl Levan, he's the son of Sandy Levan, who was the Ways and Means chairman. He'd win Michigan, like he'd waltz through Michigan. He's also a former synagogue president.
Okay.
But he has been very critical of Israel. He calls himself a Zionist, but he's been very critical of Israel for years, and was very supportive of Ilhan Omar and Rashida Tlaib every time that they were attacked. And AIPAC said that the reason they went after him was that he, as a former synagogue president, was giving cover to critics of Israel.
He was sort of a uniquely powerful and influential voice.
He's also he was the most powerful and most eloquent kind of pro-labor and pro-union voice in the House. So I think if you actually did nominate him, AIPAC absolutely loses its mind. He wins Wisconsin, Michigan, Pennsylvania with his connections there and with his pro-labor, pro-union record, and he easily beats Donald Trump by 10 points. And I don't see that as even a controversial thing to say.
Right.
Yet it's basically impossible to envision it happening, which then raises the question of what is the point of a political party that can't do that, that can't even conceptualize of doing that?
Right. I mean, listen, I'm all for it. I am 100% on board. But it's not like there haven't been alternatives in the Democratic primary from the beginning. You've got Marianne Williamson, you've got Dean Phillips. So, if your whole thing is like, oh, she's never been elected to office. Well, this is a credentialed fellow who, he's not where I am on Israel, but he's been much better than Joe Biden and has an actual knowledge of the region. He's on the, the chair of the subcommittee on the Middle East. So he has, he's been to the region, he has some understanding of it. And so there are alternatives, but the Democratic Party has gone out of their way to make sure that there are not only no debates.
Not even having primaries.
They're not even having primaries. That's right. I mean, this news just broke of another state, I believe is North Carolina, that just kicked everybody off the ballot except Joe Biden. And it's preposterous.
It's like Saddam Hussein stuff.
It truly, truly is. So you now are up to, I believe it's 4 or 5 states that have just said, we're just not even having a primary. Yeah. We're just, Joe Biden, you're the guy, that's it.
100% to 0. Congratulations.
Right. And all in the interest of preserving democracy, of course.
Yeah.
So, you just can't take seriously that they actually believe that democracy is at risk, that Trump is a unique threat. Because if he was, you're talking about, Levan. The fact that he's not that known and he's just sort of like a generic person is a massive asset.
Right.
Every poll shows that if you just have generic Democrat on the ballot, they beat Trump hands down. It's not even close.
Well, I've got a generic Democrat for you.
You add to it that he's got, good like populist labor, and he's good on the issue of, not just enabling genocide because it's Israel. I think you've got a pretty compelling case there, in my opinion. But the Biden team does have one thing going for them. Ryan, this was just recently on Fox News. I just had to find an excuse to put this in the show because it's sort of hilarious. For some reason, I don't know why, they brought on a tarot card reader to try to tell us about the future of what's going to happen in politics. And they asked her specifically about the coming year for Donald Trump. Let's take a look at what happens.
What is that?
I do recognize that I'm at Fox TV. I have a sense of loss.
The death card she pulls there, and she tries to cover and be like, it just means a loss. It means a loss. Yes.
Dark year for Donald Trump. Listen,
I guess the lesson there is literally anything could happen over the course of this year. I think any outcome is on the table.
Certainly. Yeah, I mean, if I were Trump right now, I wouldn't be feeling great either. I wouldn't be feeling great if I were either of these people.
No.
Yet one of them probably is going to win,
and
which is bizarre.
Would not be feeling great if I was an American citizen, which I am, and I am not feeling great about what 2024 is going to bring. Because like I said, I can't, normally like we're political nerds. I get excited for presidential years. The Iowa caucuses are less than 2 weeks away now, which is crazy to me. And it's just like, I cannot envision a positive scenario unfolding that I would be happy about, or that the American people should be happy about this year. And, I don't think I'm an outlier in feeling that way.
Yeah, it's pretty bad.
Hey guys, if you like that video, go to breakingpoints.com, become a premium subscriber, and help us build the best independent media organization on the planet.
That's right. We're subscriber funded. We're building something new. We want to replace these failing mainstream media organizations.
So again, to subscribe, it's breakingpoints.com.